I heard from the brother Sadatullah Khan, is a life coach conducting the discovery program. He used to enact and tell, if a, a cricketer, if a batsman wants to hit a century, if he sees the scoreboard and face the ball, he will lose the stump. For a batsman to score century, he has to take care of each ball. Each ball is important. If he pays attention to each ball and hit it with care, and by successively he can hit the century. For a teacher, every class, teacher has to get it done very effectively. Then successively, ultimately, the purpose of taking the lesson will be fulfilled. For every subject, there is a purpose. So we are not teaching various subjects, not for the sake of degree, not for the sake that the student should get just the pass in the final exam. Preparing the student to secure marks may enable him to have a certificate, but he cannot acquire the skill and the right knowledge, and that he has to learn through the subject. He cannot. Teaching every subject has a purpose. I give an example. That is, a student studies science. He is supposed to inculcate the skill on observing. Observing is the key to the invention. So observation, and you should know to do anything properly exactly. That is why we conduct the practical. You should have the skill of measuring, and you should have the skill of understanding, conceptual understanding. Maths is basically logic. Learning maths, the purpose is to understand why. Logical thinking. A student who is studying subject science is supposed to have the you should have the thinking. You should have the logical thinking. You should have the analytical thinking. You should have the critical thinking. Logical thinking means reasoning. See, Newton found the law of gravitation. Yes, the Gupran sir has joined. Alhamdulillah, sir. So I just conclude. So every subject has a purpose, and every subject we expect the student to inculcate certain skills. See, overall the purpose of subject will be accomplished when every lesson is taught with accomplishing the purpose. The teaching the every lesson, the purpose will be accomplished when every class is taken with a purpose. So successively, let us take the class, every class seriously to serve the purpose. Then ultimately the teaching the lesson will be served. Ultimately the teaching the subject will be served. Now over to Gufran sir. Just I engage them in between.
Jazakallah, sir, for filling in. I got logged off and I tried my best to log in. And thank you so much for the patience. Ji. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. So we were talking last time about lesson plan and lesson goal, difference between lesson plan and lesson goal. And the difference between knowing is not equal to knowing how. And this is a critically important difference, wherein generally teachers are MA, BA, BSc, MSc, whatever, or B.Ed, D.Ed they have done. So the content they know what to teach in maths and science and history and geography. But knowing how to deliver effectively is what comprises the lesson planning. The actual planning part is the process, not the content. And this is what I was stressing on the last time, that many a times we teachers, we just end up writing the content that is there in the textbook in the lesson plan. Right? This is a mistake that we should not do. The content is understood to be taught, but the process is what is expected in a lesson plan. And as I said last time also, that naturally, the more adept you get at developing effective lesson plans and teaching effectively, the easier it becomes for you to write down your lesson plans. It's much easier because you have got practice. And when you got practice, right, then it becomes easier for you to finalize your lesson plan. Similarly, the thing that is important for us to learn is that we should develop in our schools a culture wherein the junior teachers or the newer teachers generally tend to watch the senior teachers in action. They interact with them and they learn with them, from them. And not just the juniors learning from seniors. To be honest, sometimes you might have a junior teacher who might be excellent. It can happen. So there should be a general culture in the school where there is interaction between teachers, among teachers, and they learn from each other. They learn the tricks, techniques, methods, pedagogies, approaches, right, of teaching effectively. And that would make your lesson planning more effective. That would make your lesson more effective because your planning becomes more effective because you have learned and you're open to learn and update yourself. Right? A good lesson plan keeps the teacher and the students on track. It tends to achieve the objectives that you have set off. And it helps the teachers avoid unpleasant surprises. Because if you have given a thought to your lesson, then you will yourself preempt the questions that the students might ask you. Right? So you'll be well prepared in advance. It will avoid unpleasant surprises for the teacher. Good planning provides a roadmap in a logical sequence. What you're going to begin with, how you're going to begin, how you're going to take the chapter forward, how you're going to conclude, and what kind of assessments you're going to do. Right? So it provides a direction, right? And it provides not just a direction for you, but if you have developed a solid lesson plan, even if you're absent or if you're on leave, for an instance, maybe you're sick or something, that lesson plan can be given to a substitute science teacher or substitute history teacher, whatever. And that substitute teacher goes through that lesson plan and he or she also can deliver as effectively, almost as effectively, right? And good lesson planning also encourages reflection, refinement, and improvement on the lesson plan. If you have developed a lesson plan and you have implemented the lesson plan, you will think about the lesson plan, that what went right and what could have been improved, right? So you can reflect upon it, you can refine it, improve it, make it better. But if you don't make a lesson plan, then what are you going to improve upon? Right? And ultimately, a good lesson plan enhances the student achievement. Now we'll look at what a poor lesson plan is. If you don't plan properly, or if you don't give full-fledged thought to that lesson, then it becomes the process of teaching and learning becomes frustrating both for the teacher as well as the student. The teacher aimlessly wanders in the classroom. Wanders not in terms of physically wandering, I'm talking about in terms of teaching, because the teacher is not clear what she is going to do. Right? She is not prepared. Right? The objectives ultimately are unmet. And the learning that is unfolding has no connection with prior learnings. No connection with prior learnings, because there was no thought given to the planning. So the whole process of teaching becomes disorganized, right? And the teacher, the good teacher, is ready with her teaching aids, the needed materials. But if she has not planned, she cannot be ready with her teaching aids, right? She'll end up wasting a lot of time. There will be poor management of the class, poor management of the time, right? And ultimately, the objectives of teaching the students will not be met. So planning is of critical importance, as Dr. Nazer Saab has written in the chat box. Failing to plan is planning to fail, and that's very true, right? So we need to plan well and well in advance to be successful and effective as teachers, right? Now, the question is, what are the required components of an effective lesson plan, right? Like when you set off planning a lesson, you must ask questions to yourselves. What am I going to teach? Who am I going to teach? What is the level of the students? What standard I'm going to teach? Whether I'm going to teach boys or girls, that also makes a difference. When you're going to teach boys, the examples you'll give will be different. When you're going to teach girls, the examples that you might give might be different. How will I teach it? Will my students understand? If I follow this process, you've got to ask questions to yourself when you are developing a lesson plan. Now, what are the parameters? We'll briefly go through the parameters of an effective lesson plan. The first and foremost parameter of a lesson plan is setting your learning objectives. And when it comes to value-based schools, Islamic schools are value-based. You need to have two objectives, two learning objectives. One is the skills that you're going to teach or impart, and the other are the traits, the qualities, the character building that you're going to do through the lesson. As I have said many times earlier, that a teacher, every teacher, whether it be geography teacher, history teacher, science teacher, any subject teacher, every teacher is a diniyat teacher. Every teacher is a teacher of value education. Because a truly integrated school is a school wherein every teacher is responsible for character building. Every teacher is responsible for inculcating values in the children. It's not just the Islamiyat or the Diniyat teacher, the ulama who come and teach, who are responsible. No. Character building is a responsibility of every teacher. And through teaching the subjects, through teaching your topics itself, you can do a lot of character building. Teaching moments arise in such a manner in the process of teaching that you must utilize. So when you begin developing a lesson plan, we need to understand that in every lesson, we should ensure that we have two lesson objectives, learning objectives. One is the actual skills that you want to teach, be it atomic structure, be it factorization, whatever subject or whatever topic. And the other is the traits that you have got to think of. That in this subject, in this chapter, what is the possibility of for me as a teacher to inculcate values? What are the possibilities? What kind of discussion can ensue in the class for character building? So we have two learning objectives. Then another parameter of lesson planning is the teaching methods to be applied. What kind of teaching methods are you going to apply? Whether it's going to be expository method, demonstration method, right? Deductive method, inductive method, whatever. You've got to mention that. Then comes the teaching aids that are required. What kind of teaching aids you are going to utilize? That has to be enlisted in the lesson plan. Then comes the breakup of time that is required to complete that particular chapter. How many sessions, how many periods you're going to take to complete a particular chapter. So you've got to break that chapter in different sessions. Then you've got to complete this chapter, say, in 5 sessions. So in the first session, what portion I'll complete? In the second session, what portion I'll complete? Breakup of time, right? The next part in lesson planning is the pre-assessment of the previous knowledge, right? As we know, in the teaching circles, this statement is very famous in terms of moving from the known to the unknown, right? So to know what is known, you need to do pre-assessment of previous knowledge. And this pre-assessment of previous knowledge is a part of the process of teaching or delivering that chapter, right? Now, as you move on with the lesson plan, you've got to write the lesson plan right from the introduction, how you're going to introduce the particular chapter, right? What kind of probing questions are you going to ask based on the existing knowledge to the students, right? Maybe you might start with a relevant story. Maybe you can start with an anecdote, a story, right? So how are you going to start with the chapter? Then when you move on with the lesson explanation, what are the key probing questions that you're going to ask? What kind of examples you're going to give them? What kind of stories and anecdotes you're going to narrate? How you're going to establish cross-subject connections for multidisciplinary learning? What kind of cross-subject connections you're going to establish? Then, as Sister Nazima has mentioned, Islamization of the subject, which is core to our schools, Islamic schools or value education based schools, is Islamization. So in our context, in this context, it will be religious and ethical connection, how we are establishing with the subject matter, be it geography, be it science, be it whatever subject, right? The relevant quotations from the Quran, from the Hadith, the moral messaging that you're going to do. Maybe you might quote some Islamic historical relevance to the topic, right? Anything that is relevant to the topic in terms of our history, right? Like, say, for an example, if you're teaching aerodynamics, right? You're going to talk about Abbas ibn Farnas, who was the first man who tried to fly, right? So relevant examples from history will be quoted in whatever subject you are teaching, right? Then what kind of demonstration are you going to do? This is also relevant, right? Maybe what kind of practical application aspect you're going to bring to the fore in the classroom, practical application, right? Then practical application in the sense, say, for an example, we learn about in history, for an example, if you're learning about Siraj-ud-Dawla and what was his name? Mir Sadiq or Mir Jafar, yeah.
Mir Jafar. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're talking about Tipu Sultan and Mir Sadiq and how Mir Sadiq and Mir Jafar, they backstabbed Tipu Sultan and Siraj-ud-Dawla. Now, this is a historical narrative that you're teaching as a history teacher, for example. But how is it practically applicable? How is it related to our practical life? You can, because in higher standards, you can connect with current affairs. You can say that in Karnataka or in Maharashtra or in particular states, what happened? How a particular government lost its majority due to horse trading. How the people who are a part of a particular political party, they left, they jumped, and they went to another political party, right? And the government lost its majority. So this is something that is a human nature, human instinct. These are human desires that compel people to do things that are wrong, right? So this was just a simple example that I give you. So in every subject, you can try to come up with what practical relevant application that you can relate to, right? Another thing that you can talk about is creative activities and enactments. What kind of creative activities you're going to do during the explanation, what kind of role plays you will do in the classroom, what kind of enactments you will do in the classroom, right? And then finally, the summary of the lesson planning, right? How you're going to summarize, what kind of creative tools you're going to use to summarize the plan, the chapter, the lesson, right? So these are tools. We will continue. There are a few more tools of recapitulation and classwork and homework. We will continue with that next week, inshallah ta'ala. And then we will actually go through an actual lesson plan in the ensuing weeks. Jazakumullah khair wa akhiru dawana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Alhamdulillah, sir. Ghufran Saab. Really, it is a motivating session, lesson planning. You have pointed out regarding skills, purpose, methodology, teaching aids, and proceeding from abstract to concrete, and moreover, the Islamization of the subject, correlation of the subject with the real purpose of life, of how to live with Islam, all these things. Really, it is a motivation. And this session lesson planning is leading to the Surah Asr, in which Allah takes on the time management. Really, it is very useful session. MashaAllah, we will continue session in the days to come, inshallah. Thank you, Janab Ghufran Sahib. Thank you. And on behalf of the Ummah and myself, and thank the teachers, all who assembled here. It is not just the sessions are not maintained only for listening. It is to be implemented in the school. The most important thing, just I have written that filing to plan is planning to file. It is the basic concept of the subject and basic concept of the life we should have in our mind. Thank you. Assalam.